All right, we're going to start the tangent function. So we've done sine and cosine a bunch, and now we're going to start working on tangent. So if you remember your right triangle trig, okay, sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. Okay, so tangent is opposite over adjacent. Now, if you remember when we were doing these special right triangles, in our unit circle, the opposite side is your y, and your adjacent side is your x, so it's y over x. And y was sine, and x was cosine. So tangent is sine over cosine. So you guys already know your sine and your cosine of all of your major angles. That's what we did with our unit circles. We did it with our snowman labs. We learned how to do it on our hands. All those things that we did to remember the sines and the cosines of your special angles. You're going to use those again because now you're going to use them to find tangent. Okay, so tangent is sine divided by cosine. These should all have thetas. Okay. So I want you to fill in your snowman lab. So the snowman lab charts had the column for radians, then a column for sine, a column for cosine that you already filled in, and then the last column was tangent. That should still be blank. So now I want you to take your tangent, or take that last column and fill it in by dividing sine and cosine. Okay, so if you have, so like the sine of 0 is 0, the cosine of 0 is 1, so the tangent of 0 is 0 divided by 1, which is 0. So you just divide the sine by the cosine and fill in that last column and then come back. So if you don't have your snowman lab and you're just trying to figure it out, or you're trying to fill your snowman lab out, you are going to find tangent by dividing sine and cosine. So tangent of 45 is going to be the sine of 45 divided by the cosine of 45. If you remember, 45 is your middle finger, 45 degrees, and it's the square root of fingers over 2. So the sine of 45 is the square root of 2 over 2. Sine and cosine of 45 are actually both radical 2 over 2. So you divide something by itself and you get 1. So the tangent of 45 is 1, because radical 2 over 2 divided by radical 2 over 2 is 1. So tangent's 1. Okay? Tangent of 30. So we're going to take the sine of 30 and divide it by the cosine of 30. 30 is your ring finger, so you put it down. Sine is below, that's 1 over 2. Cosine is above, so that's the square root of 3 over 2. Now to divide fractions, you multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, so we have 1/2 times 2 over radical 3. The 2's cancel because one's on top and one's on the bottom, so you have 1 over the square root of 3. Unfortunately, we can't leave the radical on the bottom. You have to rationalize your denominator. So to do that, you multiply both top and bottom by radical 3. So that leaves you the square root of 3 over 3. So the tangent of 30 is radical 3 over 3. Okay? Now, 120 is not one that you can do on your hand because you need to find your reference angle first. So 120 is in the second quadrant, so reference angles in your second quadrant is 180 minus theta. So you do 180 minus 120, and you get 60. So we're going to do the sine of 60 over the cosine of 60. Okay, so the sine of 60 is the square root of 3 over 2. Cosine of 60 is 1/2. Then same concept, you're multiplying by the reciprocal. So radical 3 over 2 times 2 over 1. 2's cancel, and it's just the square root of 3. So the tangent of 60 is radical 3. We have to consider that we were originally in the second quadrant because it was actually 120 degrees. So in the second quadrant, sine is positive, but cosine is negative. So this was a negative, so a positive number divided by a negative number is negative. So the tangent of 120 is negative square root of 3. Now, this is where we need to remember when things are positive and negative. So everything, both sine and cosine, are positive in the first. So a positive divided by a positive is a positive. Okay, so tangent's positive in the first. Everything in the first is positive. All right, in the second quadrant, sine is y, so that's positive. Cosine is x, which is negative. One positive number and one negative number gives you a negative, so tangent is negative in the second. In the third, sine is negative because we are down. Cosine's negative because we're to the left. Now this is kind of weird because a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so tangent actually ends up being positive in the third. In the fourth, sine, we're still down, so sine is negative. Cosine is positive because we're to the right, and one positive number and one negative number gives you a negative, so tangent's negative. Okay, so these are the things we're focused on. You already should know where sine and cosine are positive and negative, but tangent is new to us, and if you notice, tangent goes every other, positive, negative, positive, negative. Okay, it's the only one that alternates like that. So your worksheet is 3-1, and that's it.